Hi everyone, my name is Jenny Foy and I'm a senior here at Paul College, an active member of MAC and AMA and our Director of Outreach.
And my name's Chloe Drusendahl. I am also a senior here at Paul College and I am the Director of Web Communications for MAC and AMA.
Before we dive into our Marketing Leaders panel, we'd like to take a moment to introduce our incredible panelists. We have 6 industry professionals, all UNH alums, here to share their career insights, tips for landing your first job, and advice on making the most of your college experience. You can download their bios using the QR code on the screen.
Please join us in welcoming Sarah Daigle, UNH alum and Programming Speaker Manager of Live Events at the International Association of Privacy Professionals, Ariella Despins, Wildcat alum and Social, Digital, and Influencer Marketing Manager at Stonyfield, Stephanie Gorman, a UNH alum who is currently a Supervisor for Social at Havas Media Group, Ian Kelly, UNH alum and Performance Marketing Manager at Timberland, Francesca Lemen, a fellow Wildcat and Director of Project Marketing Management at Fidelity, and Julia Pelosi, UNH alum and Sponsored Ads Account Manager at Chewy. I'm now going to hand it off to Sam Filippi, a senior here at Paul College and our MAC Director of Events, who will be moderating this panel today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. As Chloe and Jenny said, we are incredibly fortunate to have such a diverse panel with us here today. Marketing professionals, each bringing their own expertise in project management, social and digital marketing, event programming, and performance analytics, all representing well-known brands. Please join me again in giving them such a warm welcome to taking their time to come here today. So to kick things off in 1 or 2 sentences, you can go however you'd like. Could each of you share your name, company, and the role you play within your organization?
I can kick us off. Hi, I'm Francesca Lehman. So excited to be here, so thank you so much for taking your time. I work at Fidelity Investments, and I work in the project management space.
My name is Julia Pelosi, echoing Francesca. So excited to be back on campus. It always feels nice to come back and spend time here. I am a sponsored ads account manager at Chewy, so I work on our retail media network, particularly running off-site ads.
And I'm Ian Kelly. Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's a really full circle moment. I lead performance marketing for Timberland, so I oversee an annual budget. I work with internal teams as well as external agencies to kind of get all the pieces together.
Hi, my name is Sarah Daigle. Thank you so much for having me here today. I work as the Programming and Speaker Manager at the IAPP, which was formerly the International Association of Privacy Professionals. So in my role, I'm overseeing the content development and the speaker management for about 12 major conferences annually.
Hey, I'm Steph Foreman. I work at Havas Media Group, and I'm a social supervisor. So I cover all social media platforms for our paid campaigns.
Hi, I'm Ariella Despins, and I do the social, influencer, and digital. I kind of oversee all of that for Stonyfield and Siggy's primarily as part of Lactose US Yogurt. So I also do some email marketing as well and web development. So thanks for having me.
Great, thank you guys. To dive in, I know marketing roles a day-to-day might not look the same, but could you guys go into a little bit explanation of what a typical day looks like for you in your organization, and could you share what some of the different days might involve if they're not all the same? Anybody can start.
I can
Go ahead. No, you go after you. So at Chewy, I am the 3rd hire on my team in total, so my days do look quite different. And to be completely honest with you, I worked at an ad agency basically my whole career, and when I got hired into this role, I was just learning what a retail media network was. So for those of you who may not know, Amazon was the first to do it in 2012, but basically the whole idea is that you have all of this traffic going to Amazon to shop. Why not turn that into a place where you can buy ads? That idea since 2012 has really grown. Some of the big players in the space are Amazon, Walmart Connect, if you've maybe had an internship and worked on it. So Chewy, who is a place where people go to shop for their most beloved, treasured children, their pets, we have that traffic and we have a really leaned in, committed audience. So my role within that is they decided earlier this year to expand that to offsite ads. So specifically what I do is if you are a brand that we sell on site and you want to run ads on Meta using our handle, you come to me and I help you strategize. So my day-to-day is really, how can I help you sell dog food on Chewy's Meta page? But also, we are just building out this capability, so really making decisions about what levers do we want to give advertisers to pull, what functionalities do we want to expand to, and things like that.
So in my role, as you heard, I kind of do a lot of different things. So every day is a little bit different for me. So I could be working on, sourcing influencers for a specific campaign, figuring out what our next organic social campaign is going to look like. I also do a lot of the email marketing and oversee that piece. So just kind of understanding, what are the trends there? Are people opening our emails? Why aren't they opening our emails? And how can we make them open our emails? And then also, of course, web development. So, I think at this point it's once a year, or I'm at least doing one new website a year for our brands, which is really exciting. So I love it because every day is a little bit different, and I get to do a lot of cool things and use a lot of different skills.
I guess I'll go. So I work, like I said, for Timberland, manage performance marketing. I work on the functional team. We're a big global brand, so we do actually have a global marketing team that kind of oversees EMEA, APAC, so Asia, and the US. But I primarily work on US and Canada media, and my day-to-day really is working with our external agencies, so we primarily work with two. So really, a lot of back and forth with them, and then a lot of back and forth with internal and external creative teams, mainly our internal creative teams, getting media out into market. So I oversee paid search, so you can think of that as like Google search ads, shopping ads, as well as anything on Meta and TikTok on the paid social space, as well as our affiliates. So any kind of activation, go-to-market strategies, any assets needed that goes to the external or internal agencies, I'm kind of the middleman there for any performance marketing needs.
I'll go next. 2 days in my role are never the same, and it's a huge reason why I love my job so much. Even if I'm just thinking about the past week, my days were wildly different, and I kind of think about my role as having 3 buckets. So I have a collaboration bucket, and for that, when it comes to events content, I could be working with our AV team to make sure that our stage specs are correct to match what we have in a speaker contract. I could be working with my wonderful marketing colleagues to make sure that what they're promoting about our event aligns with the content and the speakers that we're going to be featuring at an upcoming conference. I could be working with our sales team to make sure any sponsored content that we have at an event coming up is aligning with our overall messaging. So that's one thing. Another bucket is speaker management, and that can take a few different forms. So I could be, say, we're working with a speaker bureau for a keynote speaker. I need to make sure that their contract is being upheld and that we're not missing anything that was outlined in their contract. Something that happened this week, we have some late breaking news in the field, and we have a huge conference coming up in a few weeks, and I have to say, okay, we've got to build a panel. Who do we know in our networks that we can pull in that will really be able to speak to this? Because I know that our attendees are going to be expecting to learn something about this when they come to our conference. And then there's more of a content logistics piece, I would almost call it. So I'm looking at an event that's, say, 8 months out, and I'm saying, okay, we need to start getting an idea of if we're running an event in Europe, what does that region want to see at their conference when they're going to it in November? What kind of content do they want? What speakers are they hoping to see? Once we have that, maybe we're starting to look and say, okay, we know we're going to run these 65 sessions. How are we going to structure those within the conference and take ourselves kind of on a journey in an attendee's shoes and say, okay, well, we're not going to lump a bunch of privacy healthcare sessions all at one time. Let's spread this out a little bit so an attendee can get the best experience content-wise. And finally, once we kind of have that and we're a few weeks out from the conference, my job is to be looking and saying, okay, we've got rooms that seat 200 people up to 2,000 people, and looking at what's going on in the privacy industry right now to say, this session is probably going to be so jam-cram packed, we need the biggest room possible for it. Or, this is kind of a niche topic right now, we can put that into a smaller room. So with the combination of speakers and content and collaborating with my other teammates, my days are always wildly different, and it's amazing.
Thank you, that was great.
I can go next, actually. So my day-to-day is also very different. It ranges whether I'm collaborating with our analytics team or our planning team. Everything revolves around what the client's needs are, though, which is really fun. So some days I'm just working on reporting and insights. Other days we're building a recommendation from scratch to share. And then also we work a lot in our campaign management. So looking at our campaigns, how they're spending, how our performance is going, our efficiencies, it all kind of ranges across the board. I also have a team that I manage and just making sure that everyone is putting what they need forward and also helping them where I can, whether it's training or growth opportunities, which I always love to find and share with them.
Well, I wouldn't want to break the trend and say that every day is the same, so I won't. Every day in my role is also very different. I am not an external marketer where I work directly with our clients. I work more in marketing operations. So think of the project management team that I manage as internal relationship managers. Whatever the business needs from me in order to be the most efficient, to make sure that we're strategizing appropriately, that's what my team and I support. A lot of it has to do with timelines. So if we are not producing the right content at the right time and delivering it at the right time, especially depending on what's happening in the market, the financial market changes really often, that's on my team. We need to make sure that we are delivering our content in a meaningful way, in a timely way, but at the right time that folks are actually going to be able to engage with it. We're also responsible for business optimization internally. So if we are not getting our products to market fast enough, if we're not getting the right engagement, we're responsible for asking the questions as to why. Why is this not working? Let's get the right people in the room to understand why this isn't working and how we can do things better in the future. So it definitely changes day to day depending on what we're seeing in the markets, but also what we're seeing internally as an organization and how we can continue to be better.
Thank you, Francesca. To go into our MAC SMAC theme of this year is building and engaging communities. So I really wanted to dive deep on that because I know it's essential to a brand's success. Could either any of you explain how does your company foster connections and loyalty within its community, whether that's among customers, employees, or industry peers? Are there any specific initiatives that have had the greatest impact for you in your role?
I can start this one. I'm super excited about it.
I know you are.
You really am. You really am. So with our customers, I work in a space in Fidelity that it's called our institutional space, but that's just a fancy way of saying we are B2B. So I don't help end investors like you and I. What I help support is other advisors who might be selling to you. So that can be a little bit tricky, right? You're trying to build relationships with folks that know a lot about the industry. So there's been a lot of social campaigns that we've done that have really helped to bring forward that community and fostering the relationships between our internal relationship managers and those clients. What are they doing? What are they seeing? And not only what does Fidelity want to present as our brand, but also those clients that we support, what do they want to support as their brand? So we do a lot of work directly with our clients on not only how can we market ourselves, but how can we market you as well. At the end of the day, folks are seeing Fidelity as the brand, but you're the ones behind it. Let's talk about that. That's really interesting. We launched a social campaign as well called Humans of Fidelity. And what we ended up doing is posting on social media in the institutional space about the employees that are behind the scenes helping. A lot of that has to do with my team in operations, right? So who are we as individuals, but actually who are we as individuals? Because the financial space can be so serious, right? How can we make it real? How can we show you who we are and tell that story, right? To some of these industry leaders that were speaking earlier, it's so important to tell that genuine story of who we are as a brand. And then something we spoke about earlier as well that I'm most passionate about is the community that we create internally at Fidelity. So we have something called employee resource groups, which I know a lot of different companies have. But I was really lucky to lead the Fidelity Young Professionals Network for 4 years when I first started at the company. And it really helps to foster like groups, right? We're all about diversity and inclusion, and we also want to make sure that there's folks that look like us at work, that are experiencing the same things we are at work. And Fidelity does a really good job at making sure we have those resource groups. We have on-site events, we have external events, we have digital networks where we can connect with one another. So they do a really great job of that, and something that makes me want to stay at Fidelity.
I can go next. Something that we heard about from Jamie as well as on the last panel was this idea of, being authentic and just like making the choice that makes you a good person, right? Like at the end of the day, like just be a good human being. And I think that that's what Chewy really leans on in their community building. If you're a Chewy customer and your dog has a birthday, your dog gets a birthday card. Which this is the worst pain in the world, but if your dog passes away, you get a stone, you get a hand-painted pet portrait. We have a team of artists where their whole job is to come to the Boston office every day and paint your pets. And we just show up authentically as good people, and that creates this community where it's not company and customer, it's Chewy community. And I think that thinking about people as human beings and not thinking about it sort of as like, well, what is this going to do to our P&L, has really empowered them to build a really strong community and establish the most important thing, which is that authentic trust.
Yeah, I'd say for Timberland, we're really big on community service. We have a slogan called "Pull on your boots and get to work." And what's really great is, I get paid 40 hours a year to do community service. So I can take off a Friday and go volunteer for an organization or a cause that I care about. And to know that the company and the organization really cares about its employees giving back matters. Every year, or actually almost twice a year, I get together with our marketing department and we go out and we do Habitat for Humanity work or volunteering at a food shelter or multiple different opportunities come to mind. But it's been really rewarding to work for a company that really cares and really wants you to be out there changing the world and giving back to the community. I'd say on the external facing side, on the customer side, outside of our loyalty program, we've tried to mimic the L.O. Bean traveling boot. So we actually had if you're familiar with that, I think it comes to UNH. It does. We did 2 years ago. We had a big yellow boot that traveled the country called the I-95 corridor. It started in New York City because Timberland's very well known in New York, and it went all the way down to Atlanta. So it peeled off 95 a little bit, but it stopped in different cities along the way, and we called it the Stoop, or the traveling boot, but the Stoop was kind of this activation along major cities that kind of built community, similar to like a pop-up that kind of like fostered our brand and gave back to local organizations in those cities and whatnot. So yeah, that's all I had there.
Yeah, I really like this question. So because I work for a professional association, it's all about community to us. And everyone at my company has a different role that they play. But when I see myself in terms of events content, maybe at face value, maybe it doesn't seem very community focused, but it really is. And when I was thinking about this, like, okay, I'm doing an event in Singapore. It's not possible for me to know every up-and-coming amazing speaker that will be able to speak at one of our events in Singapore. It's not possible for me to know every single topic that's going to be so important to our attendees there. And so I have the opportunity to work with various advisory boards that talk to me and my team about what content is big, what speakers are up and coming, and we're able to sometimes have these newer speakers at our events, and it further creates this community with our attendees and our speakers. And every event that I do, I'm always like running around at the conference venue, and I'm not usually able to pop into a lot of sessions, but one of my favorite things is when I go into a session room, like right when a session has ended, and it seems like the attendees are pretty much rushing the stage to get in touch with these speakers face to face and just further their connections with them. To me, I know that I've done my job, and I've helped further that community for our privacy professionals. So.
For me, our company has really shown how they care for employees and want us to grow and want us to be happy. So on my smaller team level, every Friday there's a list that goes out and it just talks about weekly wins, and anyone can submit about anyone else that they want. So maybe someone I work with did an incredible job helping me with a project. I'll submit that, and that Friday a long list with people's names and shout outs go out, which I think is very fun. It creates kind of a great environment. And we also have a database where you can high five someone. So everyone kind of starts with points in the beginning of the year. And let's say I worked great on someone with a project and we were really thrilled, we might high five each other, and then those points grow. And towards the end of the year, or during any time of the year, I guess, you can redeem those points for gift cards, experiences. I know someone who bought a flight to Brazil, which was really interesting. I didn't know that was possible. And then on a higher point with leadership, they've definitely the last few years listened to what their employees have given back and feedback, and they've created a more open forum with us. So every month we have a town hall where they address anything that might have been submitted, whether it's in surveys or pinged or emailed to them. They cover everything. They want us to know what's going on, and they want to also address what our thoughts are, which I really appreciate. They travel to different offices, so if you go into an office a few times a year, you'll see the team there, and they'll have a big conversation going on. They bring up different people on different teams to discuss what's going on, which is really great. And if you're remote, sometimes like me, you can just tune in, and if you wanted to be part of the discussion, they'll put you up on the board. So they really want us to create a happy environment with positive employees, and I'm really appreciative of that.
As far as Stonyfield goes, so we're a local brand, so we try really hard to connect with our communities. So our community marketing team is amazing. They are always throwing events. We actually have an event coming up if anyone's interested, our Earth Day 5K in April. It's a super fun event, and they do an amazing job connecting with the people who helped us ultimately get to where we are today. And so we are at ski mountains, we are sampling at big events that are happening throughout the state. And so that's been amazing. And we also try really hard in terms of connecting the people behind the yogurt, so the farmers, and connecting the farmers with our consumers, and they do an amazing job with that. We try really hard to convey that on social, through our influencers. We actually do an influencer farm tour to help kind of connect those dots for our consumers and really create that community and make it feel like, yes, when you buy a quart of Stonyfield, you are supporting a small family farm. And so community is super important to us.
That's great. I'm glad that all your roles, you guys all knew what to say about community, and that's really important, especially with it being our theme. We also think it's important too. Going into my next question, looking at marketing tactics, I know the last panel talked about how marketing strategies are constantly evolving. How do you, in your role, how do you stay on top of new trends and innovations, and what specific marketing tactics do you use to ensure that your brand remains relevant and engages to your correct target audience in meaningful ways? I know that was a long one, so.
I think we talked about this in the last panel too, but our job as marketers is to meet our consumers where they are on their journey. So be a good listener and understand where on their journey they are, and then find the vehicle to meet them there. So there's no one-size-fits-all solution. You can say TikTok is the answer until you're blue in the face. It's only the answer for certain problems. But just understanding okay, my audience is here, here, and here. What 3 vehicles do we need to meet them there? And that's typically the easiest way to sort of stay on top of what those trends are. I also think there are trends that you shouldn't lean into. Not every single brand needs to lean into things. Not every single brand organically needs to be commenting on Instagram posts. I think the authenticity piece and the part where that brand connects to something that's trending is how they should choose to participate in it.
Right.
And to build off of that, so I agree, you got to meet them where they are. And I think that starts with your own behavior, especially when it comes to marketing, right? So we all, or most of us, live on social for a good portion, sadly, of our days. And so I think for me, the biggest thing is social is the pulse, right? TikTok, love it or hate it, you're seeing what's happening in real time, essentially, trends, whether it's a dance or something that's happening right now in the news. And I think that has been a key tool for us to figure out, like, okay, how should we be talking to our consumers, and in what ways? So if I'm on TikTok and I'm scrolling through and I'm noticing how I'm engaging with content, with brands, am I commenting, am I swiping, am I saving, sharing, like, what is that trigger for me? That is the first place I start, because I think it ultimately tells me, okay, I'm not the only one who's doing this, right? So how can we pivot our strategy and our tactics so we're meeting them where they are, but also like kind of being on the edge of that behavior? Those shifts happen so quickly, especially with social, so that's the best place for us to start.
Yeah, I think building off of meeting consumers where they are, I think it also brings up an opportunity to educate them. Obviously, we think about marketing as a funnel. I hate to use buzzwords here, but that brings up an opportunity, right? You're discovering a brand new brand or product on TikTok. It's an opportunity for your brand to kind of step in and educate them where they're at exactly. So.
For me, working at an agency, keeping up with all the trends and trying to be as in tune with what's going on across all platforms is really important, even if we're not currently running on said platform, which does happen, but scrolling like through your personal feeds, reading what's going on. I have a lot of Google alerts set to go to my email on different keywords and trends, just so I know what's going on, and kind of covering different advertising sites. And also, which I always find important, is sometimes my feeds really skew towards what I like, which makes sense, but sometimes what I like doesn't match what my client is doing. So trying to kind of search my keywords there and cover what's going on, or discussing with other colleagues or teammates to see like their perspective and like what they're searching or what they're seeing, because for our clients, it's really important that you know everything that's going on, even if it's not related to what they want. They still kind of want to hear, just so they can keep in mind and maybe look back on it in the future.
Yeah, I liked that Julia mentioned keeping up with all the trends is not great for every business type, right? You don't want somebody working in the financial industry who's, going at the latest, greatest thing. You want some stability there. So we have to be careful in my industry about external trends, if you will, that we are in fact keeping up with. There's also a lot of legal. I'll go into that later. But in terms of trends that we're always making sure that we're keeping on top of to stay relevant, it's more our marketing technology stack. So what is the technology that we're investing in? What are the external vendors that we're investing in and utilizing to make sure that we are getting the right data to target our audiences? And again, in the safest way, because again, we are dealing with sensitive information in my industry. So we're always reevaluating our marketing technology stack. What should we be utilizing? What's the information that is relevant that we should be gathering? AI, should we be using it? Should we not? And how should we be using it? I know Fidelity has an internal team dedicated to our own homegrown technology systems as well. So we're always staying on top of trends of other technology companies and how we can utilize that, amplify it, and make it even better.
Yeah, I'll say one more point. I'm fortunate enough to work directly with the walled gardens, so I work directly with, we have Meta reps and Google reps and TikTok reps, and their data science teams are really at the forefront of all the data that you're giving them. And so, we're meeting with them monthly, and just to be able to extract certain tidbits from their audience insights in relation to the footwear industry and Timberland has been super, super helpful.
That's great, thank you. Francesca, you did touch on my next question, data-driven decision-making and marketing, and how it just does really play a crucial role in your guys' careers today. If you could expand a little bit, how does data influence your decision-making process, and how do you balance data-driven insights with creativity and innovation in either campaigns or events that you guys do?
I'll go first. Okay. So I'm going to rewind to further back in my career to answer this. So when I graduated from Paul, my first job out of here was starting my own wedding planning business. And I worked in it for a few years. I loved the industry, but there was something that wasn't quite right. And I remember I'd get done with a wedding and I'd say, okay, that went great. There were 5 things that went wrong. The bride and groom didn't notice, thank goodness. But I was like, okay, I can apply this now to another wedding, but it's not the same wedding. And there was some disconnect there for me. When I started to realize that I could take that skill set and move it over to corporate events where we have so much data post-event to figure out how to make it better for next time, like that felt right for me. And so it's so great. We run about a dozen events a year. Most of them run year over year. And I'm able to sit down with my team after an event and look at this rich data we have, mostly from survey feedback, and say, oh, wow, okay, this content is what our attendees are looking for. Like, this went really well. Or we can look and say, wow, that speaker we thought was going to be amazing kind of turned out to be a dud, like noted for next time, and maybe we'll do a better job vetting them ahead of time. So just based on that data, we're always able to make our programs better for our attendees and really provide them a more enhanced experience.
I think that my experience is a little bit different because I firmly believe that advertising is a really, really delicate balance of data and trusting your gut. I think that we look at data every single day. I can recite to you the click-through rates. I can tell you how many impressions we served. I can tell you the pink creative did better than the blue creative 9 times out of 10, whatever the case may be. But sometimes there's something that data just doesn't capture, or there's something that the AI that's telling you to make a different creative just doesn't quite get. That's like that human touch. So I think the delicate balance is knowing when to say, okay, all the data is telling us that this is the end of this pathway. We shouldn't move forward with this creative idea or whatever you're really looking at. And also knowing in my gut, I think based on what I've seen already, even though the data is pointing at us not using pink font, I really feel strongly we should try it and see how it goes. So I think it's a balance and just trusting yourself enough to know when to use the data and when to just trust yourself.
Yeah, I agree with that balance. In the advertising world, we do a lot of conversion lift and brand lift studies. So you might see a pre-roll ad come up on YouTube or even on Meta that says, hey, have you heard of these 4 brands before? Have you heard of Tide or Dove or something along those lines? That would be a brand lift example of a brand lift study. Getting those lift studies is helpful, but I think at the end of the day, it's just directional in nature. What the world of advertising that is kind of shifting into is, at least in the CPG brand world, is incrementality. So how much marketing has actually impacted that sale or driven that certain action, which I think is something that's super interesting. But at the end of the day, I still think it goes back to your point of like trusting your gut.
Yeah, and people in the room who are still currently attending, Paul, how many of you know what incrementality means? Out of curiosity. We have one. So incrementality, for those of you that don't know, is literally a test that says it takes part of your audience out of the audience pool that you're targeting, and then you get a beautiful little graph that says your ads drove 10 conversions, and the group that didn't see your ads only purchased 8, so your incrementality is 2. That is going to be your career for probably the next 5 years if you go into the ad space, is just simply understanding that and how to measure it and things like that. So if you're curious for something to look into after this, I would say look up incrementality.
Well said.
I'll jump in. So data is really important to me. I don't like pulling it. I love analyzing it. For me, something I try really hard to instill in my team is data informs insights, and insights inform action. So you take the hard numbers, you pull out context, and then you figure out, what do I do with this? And to your point, sometimes that comes down to, yes, we're going to take this data, it's very clear based on this that what we need to do, and sometimes you need to trust your gut and figure out, like, okay, like maybe we need to try something, maybe we don't, I don't know. One example that I love is, and this could have been a gut decision, but my gut says that this came down to a data decision, but Duncan, Spidey D, if anyone remembers this social campaign that happened this year, when that first came out, my team was just blown away at how unhinged it was. And we were just, every day, we'd talk about it and we'd say, like, oh my gosh, like, I can't believe this is working, I can't believe this is working, this is so, like, crazy. And so far away from what we've seen with them. And I have to say, like, there must have been some kind of data-driven insight that, said we should take this action. It could have come down to a gut decision. Sure, like, it definitely could have. But the data led them to continue doing something that made a really crazy campaign that I think was pretty successful. So yes, data, quite important, but definitely figure out the balance there.
That was a great point. Thank you. Have you guys worked on a campaign or project recently that created a meaningful change or recently resonated deeply with a specific community, going back to our theme of today? And can you share a bit about it and what impact it had?
Sure. We just launched this last month. It's a smaller program. Long story short, we have a team of footwear designers internally at Timberland. One of them basically started a side hustle called Constant Development, and that is essentially a program where it connects less fortunate individuals, maybe inner city children, probably I'd say grades 4 up through high school, and it connects individuals who are very I guess design focused, or they love arts and crafts. They're very creative individuals, and it shows them a path forward for footwear design, because the industry of becoming a designer is very niche. It's not very well known, so he's bringing that path upwards through, I guess, schools around the country. It's slowly growing through the Boston and New York City metro areas currently. And what happened, I guess where I'm going with this is a winner of this contest, there was a submission. You could draw a sketch of a shoe, and there was an unanimous board who voted on the sketch that won. And then the person who won, our internal designers actually designed that shoe in the flesh, and it's actually now sold on our website in a limited release drop of, like, I believe 100 pairs.
That's awesome.
So we did a marketing campaign kind of around this story, and it's really cool because the designer works for our company and kind of started this on the side.
Right. That's great. Thank you.
We have a lot of thought leadership that we develop on a weekly, monthly cadence. It all depends on the type of content, right? But I thought it was really interesting. I did not do this because, again, I am more internal, but one of the marketers that we worked with developed a campaign on how can we create financial thought leadership that we take and utilize, but it's our actual clients creating that thought leadership and kind of showcasing that we as Fidelity agree with what's being stated by this other firm. And one that helps with not only getting the thought leadership content out there, but it also helps with that client retention relationship. I think that's something we don't think enough about. We think a lot about gaining new clients. How can we gain new clients? How can we use data for new clients? What about those clients that you already have? They're really important, and you don't want to lose them either. So we did a campaign where one of my colleagues did videos with some of our B2B clients around what's really meaningful for them in the industry, what trends they're seeing in the industry, what they're up against, not only in terms of the market, but also their end clients as well. And instead of having to use all of our resources to create net new thought leadership content, we utilized their resources, reposted those videos, and it created a community, kind of going back to that. But it was also just a really meaningful campaign, again, not only for our new clients and our prospects, but for that client retention, to showcase to them, hey, we really care about your opinions as well, and you are somebody that we value and want to showcase on our brand handle.
I'll go. So last year, for our biggest event of the year that we never have any trouble selling tickets for, ticket sales were incredibly low, and it was extremely unusual, and we were trying to figure out, why is this happening? This is usually at least 5,000 people, no problem getting them into this event. And one of our top ways that we market our conferences is through keynote speakers. And we were trying to figure out, is it an economy issue? Is it that people aren't willing to spend the money to send their employees to go to our conference? What's going on here? So we put our heads together and we thought, maybe what's going on is our keynote speakers that we're plugging so hard are very aspirational. And maybe if you're going to your employer and saying, I want to go to this conference, they want to know that you're coming back with things that you can apply to your daily job, the more technical nitty-gritty stuff. So we started to actually pull back a bit from our typical way of marketing our event of just focusing on keynote speakers, and we launched a kind of Meet the Speaker series, but more for our breakout speakers. And we were featuring them each week of like, hey, here's this really cool person that's working in your job every day that when you come to his session, you're gonna learn so much from him about this topic, and you're gonna be able to go back to your boss and say, I've got this now, I'm ready to do this. And it drastically helped increase our ticket prices as a result. So that one always made me feel really good.
So last year, well, actually, it was supposed to be the end of the previous year, but we were going to launch this big PR campaign for Siggy's. And we had a celebrity that we were going to work with, and it was very tied to our mission, very planned out, with months and months and months of planning. And at the last minute, she pulled out. Literally in like December, we were launching it in January, and we were like, oh my gosh, we need to have this crazy, we need to do something, we need to do something. And so we ended up working with our PR agency and our internal agency, and we came up with this idea of the digital detox. And it was something that was trending in the news, it was a conversation that was kind of bubbling, and it really came out in like this past January, and we launched this, and it was a contest, and very simple, actually like incredibly simple execution. We didn't have a ton of creative for it. We didn't really do a ton. We had a press pitch. We had one social post planned, and then we just had this contest where you submit why you think you need a digital detox. And we were expecting, this was super last minute. Like if we get 3,000 leads from this, it's gonna be amazing. The next day after we launched it, I opened up HubSpot, and I immediately called my boss and I said, we have 50,000 entries already. This is insane. This is crazy. And it just kept going up and up and up. And I think this ran for, I want to say 3 weeks. And we ended up with 323,000 leads and 5 billion earned media impressions. It was on Seth Meyers, it was on a lot of local TV. A lot of publications picked it up. And I think it was a really great example of us like coming together with our PR agency and tapping into a conversation that was bubbling and just ready to kind of burst. And it was the perfect timing. And now we're challenged to do the same thing with an even smaller budget. And so I think, it's a really interesting thing to look back on and say, okay, what did we do well there? And what worked? And like, what can we pull forward for next time?
For me, it would be at Havas. We have groups, and you can join whatever interests you the most, but one of my favorites would be, so in Boston, for example, where I'm located out of, there's obviously small local businesses, and some of them don't have the resources to dedicate to knowing like how exactly campaigns work on social media. They'll have a small budget, but they'll just have creatives and hope for the best. They don't really know how targeting works or audience creation or how long something should run. So sometimes we're able to people can join this group and dedicate however much time they have and help educate and give their knowledge back. So on my end, on the social front, it could be creative best practices across the board for any social media platform or creating a specific campaign. Sometimes it's Women's History Month. Sometimes it can kind of just range throughout the summers. So I think giving back in different ways to smaller local businesses is always something I'm very passionate about, and I'm happy that I can take some of my skills and pass it along to others.
Thank you so much. I want to make sure we have enough time for Q&A, so I'm going to make this a two-part question. Thinking back on your time at UNH, how did being a part of this community shape your journey and prepare you for a career in marketing? And based on your own experience, what is the best advice you would give the students here today looking to enter this industry?
I think about my time at UNH probably more often than I thought I would when I was graduating. I think about the classes that I take here all the time. I was just referencing today.
QDM.
Yeah. Who here is taking QDM? Did you love it? Yeah,
I told her no too. Sorry if you're a QDM professor here. I was honest.
I think about QDM all the time because nobody liked QDM. And I was that one weirdo, like, That's weird. I do. Okay, but I won't say that out loud, right? And that's made me think a lot about my career of like, what did I enjoy in college that maybe was outside of the norm? And how can I utilize that information to path my career trajectory? I don't think anybody is sitting in these seats right now thinking, I want to do marketing for a financial firm. Like, that's really not all that exciting, right? You would think. But taking all that I've learned at UNH, it really set me up for success to understand what I really am interested in. And I like data, I like process, I like helping other people. And although I think I could have been a great marketer, where I'm really most impactful is by utilizing those skill sets and helping marketers do what they do best. And there's a lot to be said for that. So I guess my feedback for all of you and things to think about, number one, are think about those classes that you really do like, or maybe don't hate, because there could be something there. And I didn't think about that until I didn't go into marketing right off the bat. I was forced to be a data analyst. And that's when I thought to myself, actually, this is cool, and I could have thought about this sooner. And then something I tell everybody coming into their next chapter of life, right, out of college is no matter what, think about your 3 non-negotiables when you're applying to different companies. To Kristen's point earlier, yes, it's so exciting to get a job at a company, right? And it's really competitive right now. But that shouldn't take away from you thinking about those 3 things that you will not negotiate on. If you have to take a job for whatever reason, great. But for me, like my 3 non-negotiables are my mental health can never deteriorate for a job, right? I need to have work-life balance. I'm a big person who likes to hang out with my family. I have a big friend group that I still keep in touch with from UNH. I need to be able to have that availability. And I need to have a culture where I can show up happy, and they have little perks for me, right? I like those little perks. I like that free coffee. I like the little snack station. Those are my 3 non-negotiables, and no matter any job I take on, it has to satisfy that. So I encourage you all to think about what your 3 non-negotiables are, and even though your first job out of college might not be super glamorous, it should hit those 3 things.
I would say my favorite thing about the UNH community is how it extends far beyond this building, far beyond the borders of it, and really exists wherever you are. I have met wildcats on planes. I met a wildcat in my office last week. He's an engineer. We never crossed paths ever. We're now friends because we both went here. And just knowing that this community will continue to show up for you over and over and over again, and don't be shy about leaning into it, because I really believe that we have like such a strong sense of community, and not every school has that. I would say in terms of advice to give, I would say stay curious. I think sometimes you leave this building and think you're supposed to walk into rooms with all the answers, but all of the smartest conversations I've been a part of have had more questions asked than answered. So just know when to ask questions versus when to listen versus when to provide answers. And then thematically for today, just be a good person. Make choices not because you think it's what your boss would want you to make, but make choices because it's the right choice to make.
Yeah, I'll say reflecting back at my years at UNH, particularly senior year, I mean, Diane's class stands out. I'm not sure if you still do the shopping cart exercise and new product development or information, but yeah, still remember that.
She does.
Still remember that. Bruce Pfeiffer, if he's still teaching, loved his class. But yeah, no, I think I just lost my train of thought on senior year, but I think, you know, the couple years transitioning into the working world and post-grad, going off of what Julia just said about staying curious, I'm a very curious person, and I think that's kind of helped me along my journey so far, of just asking the right questions, and sometimes the wrong questions, but you learn from that. And, you know, staying curious and also just knowing yourself. I've taken a couple personality tests over the last 5 years just to better understand how I've grown from, you know, when I graduated to a couple years of experience to now almost a decade of experience. And it's crazy how those tests have changed, and just how I've been able to really understand my skill set and where, you know, my skill set and also my weaknesses, and how to identify and better communicate those weaknesses to people, whether it's in an interview or with a boss or with a certain situation. But really being able to sell yourself is important, you know. Each one of us in this room is unique in their own ways, and if you can sell yourself to somebody and, you know, provide valuable information and be authentic, that's, you know, you can do anything.
Yeah, thinking back at my 4 years here, I think one of the things, I say this to people all the time, like anything in life, even if it's whatever it is, including UNH, it's all about what you make it. It would be very easy to just passively go through your 4 years here, or you can put yourself really outside of your comfort zone. For me, that took the form of starting the Women in Business group when I was a junior here, and I didn't know what I was doing, and the thing that I look back on now and think is like, that was such a safe place to try something and maybe fail at it, but also have some amazing wins and some really just great experiences. And I didn't know at that point what I'd be doing in the future, but I started the event or the group, and I said, okay, we have X number of meetings that we're going to have this semester. I need to find guest speakers to come to these things. What is my audience? Do I have finance majors, marketing majors in here? And I didn't know at that time that like this is what I'd be doing for a job someday, but it gave me a really great foundation without even realizing that that was kind of what was happening at that point. So I think getting involved, getting outside of your comfort zone, it's always going to be a safe place at UNH to try and fail at something. And then in terms of, sorry, what was the second part? Totally lost.
Advice just for students here.
Yeah, I would say my advice, especially as I'm starting to have direct reports that are just coming out of college, I think just striking the balance between having confidence in yourself and having confidence in your abilities while finding a really good balance of knowing when to ask questions and that it's okay to ask questions. And you probably won't know everything right off the bat, and that's totally okay. No one's expecting you to. So yeah, stay curious and stay confident in your abilities.
UNH for me, I feel like created a very welcoming environment and atmosphere across the board with my friends, with my teachers, the faculty, kind of everyone here I felt very comfortable with, which is something that translated into my like work career as well. I think taking advantage of everything that's going on, there's so much to offer, and you can kind of just stay your path, or you can branch out and try what you want, try different things, even if it doesn't really follow in your major or your career path that you're working towards. It's really important to take advantage because you'll meet different people. I had friends who worked with agriculture, and now they're at companies, and those companies have marketing departments, and if I ever decided to pivot, I could reach out to them. It's a great connection. We're friendly network friends, and I think that it's just things to keep in mind, that you can have your small group, but it's always important to branch out and keep those connections and stay in touch. Even grabbing a coffee once a year from people that you went to college with is nice to keep in touch and see what's going on. But translating into when you enter into your actual career post-grad, I think something for me is I found I do my best work and I feel most confident when I have a very comfortable team. So with my manager and the people I manage, feeling comfortable and positive are two really important aspects that I feel I get my best work done. I'm open to trying different things. I'm looking at different projects because I know that they're supporting me and I'm supporting them. And it just keeps a very open dialogue where even when, obviously great things happen, but sometimes mistakes happen as well. And instead of kind of coming down harsh on yourself, the team is kind of there to show you that, okay, this happened. How can we work from this? How can we see it in a positive light and grow? So you might not forget your mistake, but you'll see it in a light that was like, oh, that did happen. And now I see it kind of as a positive growing opportunity. And that's what I really enjoy.
So I was a journalism major, and I think that was very valuable for me at UNH because, one, amazing professors, just a great community of people, and I think just I learned so much within my major. And then I took one communications class, and I loved it. I loved it so much. And, it kind of gave me the opportunity to finally see, hey, you're a journalist, but you can do marketing with a different point of view. And that was super valuable for me to kind of branch out and see that, because I'm always trying to break the boxes I'm in marketing. And I think that that started here. And so that was super valuable to me. And I'm always coming back. I'm always at the hockey games, the football games. My husband's on the alumni board. I used to do the UNH networking events. I love UNH, so I encourage you to stay in touch and stay connected once you leave. In terms of advice, something that I really struggled with when I left was balancing like the idea of being professional and being myself. Because you walk into this new setting and you don't know, like, I'm not comfortable here. Like, I don't know who I'm supposed to be yet. And I think there's a difference between being, professional and just boiling yourself down to this gray, watery corporate mush that, like, you can't connect with anybody that way. And succeeding is a lot about connections and building those genuine connections, whether it's your alums or people who you're working with. And so I think having that balance and figuring out, like, it's not that you can't be yourself, it's you just have to be respectful to your peers, to your leaders, and so on. So definitely don't shy away from bringing yourself to work, because that's your best self that you're bringing to work. So just keep that in mind.
Thank you, and thank you to all of you. That was such valuable and insightful advice. We can open up to Q&A now for the audience.
Don't be shy.
Do you want us to start with our Q&A that you proposed earlier?
I've got a question for the group. If TikTok shut down, how would that affect your job?
Yeah, I guess I can answer that. We would just reallocate budget elsewhere. It almost did shut down, and we had a backup plan ready to go.
I can also jump in. My client is dark on TikTok right now. We're paused, and we have reallocated most of our budget to other platforms. And then we may circle back pending what decisions get made over the next few months or so, but it was just too big of a risk at that time. But I think it also depends on the client, so.
We're currently building an offsite product, and currently it's Meta only, and we were making expansion plans. So the way that it impacted my role was TikTok was number one. We have to prioritize this, and we have to make it available to people to buy ads on. And we've since pivoted that strategy, just because what we heard from our advertisers was they weren't even putting their own brand dollars there, and they found it to be too risky. So we changed our product roadmap based on that feedback and based on the fact that it's sort of up in the air.
So TikTok for me is really interesting, because I think it's just a huge reality check that as marketers, we rely so much on the tools that we are on, right? TikTok could have shut down and it could have cost a lot of money, right? And I think it's just valuable for us to learn from that and say, like, hey, if Meta were to shut down, where are we moving? How are we shifting? Like, that's the challenge, and that's what makes it so exciting. And so yes, I think for us, we had that plan as well. Like, we're gonna shift to Meta, we're gonna shift to Shorts. And so, like, always thinking about what's that next step if something were to happen, if something were to shut down.
And I think the approach to that is actually really interesting and worth commenting on. Like, I was switching jobs as that was happening, so I got to see this from both an agency purview as well as on the brand side. And what was interesting to me is both approached it in the same way, which is, what is TikTok accomplishing for us? Who's our audience that's there, and how are we meeting them there? And how can we use those dollars to still reach those people and still accomplish that same KPI outcome? So for us, it was impressions for the most part. We weren't seeing huge sales come from it, both for my agency beauty clients as well as on the Chewy side, to be honest. So we were like, how can we substitute those impressions, and where do we buy to do so?
Yeah, in the B2B space, we don't utilize TikTok, so for me, it would not affect my job at all. But again, we're always analyzing our marketing technology stack, and what I found really interesting is we do utilize, actually created a couple of communities for financial advisors. So we're always just trying to stay ahead of the curve on technology. That's not always an option, right? But we tried to create these financial communities so that way if, TikTok of financial services does become a thing, we're already there. We've already created those communities. We already know how to implement new clients, right? So we're always trying to stay ahead of those types of technologies. So if one of those technologies went down, it'd be a bigger impact. But
Hi, it was nice meeting you. Speaking of social media, I just wanted to say that I have not seen any of you guys on TikTok. Like, no ads, no nothing, not even user-generated content. But I do see a lot of Stonyfield on there.
Honestly, good job. Congrats.
Since you guys are local to my hometown, would it be possible if you could put more Stonyfield products in the New Hampshire area and do more local marketing with local influencers? That would be really cool.
Ooh, I will definitely take that back. I love it. Sold.
And also, I really like the dairy-free smoothie pouches, and I wish those were everywhere
Oh my
instead
gosh,
of
aren't they
just Whole
delicious?
Foods.
Love it.
Any more questions?
So this question is for those who have worked at both the agency side and then the client side. Contrast those for us and tell me what you see as the differences, and do you prefer one over the other?
Sure, I'll go. I started my career on the agency side. I worked for a smaller, pretty small agency, primarily focused on web development for 3 years. And then I jumped ship to I'd say a medium-sized agency. Wasn't a holding company, but it was based out of Boston, had a bunch of different offices around the country, and I worked on big health insurance, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Anthem, Aetna accounts. And what I noticed on the agency side is it's really fast-paced. The culture at both the agencies was similar, where you're working. It's kind of like a very team mentality where you're very client-focused on the front end. You need to serve the clients, and the back end is kind of scrappier and getting things done behind the scenes. But I learned so much at those agencies. You're so focused, and you're working with in a lot of different industries and a lot of different clients, and you're getting scrappy, but you're just constantly learning, and you're surrounded by people who also want to learn. It's like being in the room with people who are smarter and better than you. You just quickly evolve and grow. And now, almost 4 years at Timberland on the VF Corp side of things. That's the portfolio brand that owns us. It's a lot different. Things move a little bit slower. It's a little bit more nuanced, but I get to focus all my energy on a single brand with kind of like one mission and one end goal, and watch that brand grow within the portfolio brand. So it's been a really rewarding journey so far.
I like to refer to myself as a recovering agency girl. I've been out for 3 months, 3 months clean.
But you started on the client side, too.
I did. So when I left here, I didn't know anything. No, I'm just kidding. Diane is wonderful, and she introduced me to her friend who works here in town. And I actually started doing new product development for an arts and crafts company. I sort of stumbled into the agency world. Our person that did our Instagram ads was pregnant, and so she ultimately had to go on mat leave, and they handed me the iPad, and they said, "Can you buy ads?" When that happened, I was like, this is kind of interesting to me, and as much as I love new products, I'm really fascinated by this idea of advertising and the metrics you see and how you can influence sort of performance and things like that. So after 2 years of putting paint into Hobby Lobby, I got a job at an agency out of Boston, and I immediately loved it. I was in the paid social space, and I stayed in the agency realm for 6 years, I think, in total. Most recently, I was at Tenuity, which is one of the largestly independently owned agencies left. If you saw the Poppy Super Bowl commercial, you've seen their work. They did a lot of the Super Bowl spots this year, actually. In terms of the difference, if you are someone who is willing to put in the hard hours, if you are someone who is wanting to learn more than you've ever learned in a short span of time in what I like to call trial by fire, agency's for you. I learned so much, and I'm so thankful for my time there. I'm not a hater of it at all. I loved being client-facing. I got to work on so many cool projects. But as your career progresses, your priorities just sort of change. And I got to the point where I turned 30 earlier this year, and I was like, I loved working Black Friday, and I loved the sort of like go-getter energy that had me working till 8, but my priorities now are different. I want work-life balance. I want some more consistency in terms of what the projects I'll be working on look like. So I did a brand side change where I'm actually working for a bunch of vendors, which is really just an agency with a fur coat on, working at Chewy with their brands. But yeah, I think it just really depends on what your priorities are and what you're looking for out of your role. To Francesca's earlier point, make your 3 non-negotiables and just know that like each job will serve you differently.
I worked for a commercial real estate business outside of Boston when I first graduated. I was super excited. It was a marketing coordinator role, so it was a new role too. So it's just kind of everything under the marketing umbrella was part of what I was working on. So events to paid social, kind of, well, I guess working with a team that did the paid social, to everything in between, which I kind of call it my boot camp out of college. It was probably one of the fastest paced experiences I've ever gone through. I would work, get into the office early for events, stay late for events that I was managing, weekend events, or sometimes just having to go in for different work structures. So I graduated college, started this job, was in it for about a year, and then COVID hit, which kind of changed the industry. But I was hit the ground running every day, which when you're young, it's super fun. It was very exciting, but I didn't really have any work-life balance. And so once COVID hit, I got laid off and kind of took some time to be like, okay, even though I'm young, I can definitely figure out what I like, and I don't need to take any job that comes my way, which I think a lot of people have covered off. And then I was introduced to Havas, which is an agency, and I did an interview kind of process there. They were kind of on a hiring freeze at the time because of COVID. They kept my resume, and they reached out when they were back to their hiring process. And I interviewed with a team, and I feel like I've been there for almost 4 years now, and I always say, every day I'm very excited to work. I feel like I have a great flexibility where it's different than my first job, so I'm always very grateful. I love it. It is a lot of learning. It's a lot of go, 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 but at the same time, I think it really just depends on who you're working with, because every day I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to see what's going on. Let's go.
That's great. Are we all set? I want to give another round of applause.
President of MAC. I just wanted to give a heartfelt thank you to all of our panelists for joining us today and sharing your valuable insights and experiences into the marketing world. We're inspired by your journeys, and today's conversations have been incredibly meaningful and beneficial because of your generosity in being here. I also wanted to express my sincere gratitude for everyone who has attended our conference. It's been an amazing event so far. Please feel free to stay after and join us in the Great Hall for some networking and refreshments. Perfect. We're also going to be announcing the winners for the Real World Business Challenge, which is an incredible opportunity for students to tackle real business challenges and contribute meaningful solutions to our local community. This intensive 5-week program has allowed students to apply classroom knowledge to real-world practice, all while strengthening their resumes and experience. A special thank you to our 6 businesses that have partnered up with us, providing our students with valuable opportunity to collaborate and drive success for their businesses. We're now accepting applications for next year's American Marketing Association Collegiate Chapter Team. Open to all majors. This is an amazing opportunity to gain real-world learning and travel to New Orleans for the International Collegiate Conference, where we're going to be competing against top colleges nationwide. 20 of us are actually headed there in April to compete for UNH. So don't miss out on this opportunity. Take the time to scan the QR code on the screen now and apply today. Applications will be open for a little while too. So. Thank you all once again for coming. It's time to head over to the Great Hall for some food and drinks.